Mary Louise returned to her room and sat down to consider the best way out of her dilemma. The detective's friendliness, so frankly expressed, pleased her in a way, yet she realized his vigilance would not be relaxed, and that he was still determined, through her, to discover where Grandpa Jim was hidden. An uncomfortable degree of danger had already been incurred by her unconsciously leading the officer to Dorfield. He knew now that the man he was seeking was either in this city or its immediate neighborhood. But unless she led him to the exact spot, to the dwelling of the Conants, it would take even this clever detective some time to locate the refugee. Before then, Mary Louise hoped to be able to warn Grandpa Jim of his danger. That would prevent her from rejoining him and her mother, but it would also save him from arrest. Glancing around her comfortable room, she saw a telephone on the wall. Beside it, on a hook, hung the book containing the addresses of the subscribers. She opened the book and, glancing down its columns, found Conant, Peter, R1216 Oak Street, Blue, 147. Why hadn't she thought of this simple method of communication before? It would be quite easy to call Mr. Conant and tell him where she was and have him warn Grandpa Jim that a detective was searching for him. She went to the telephone and took down the receiver. "Officer?" cried a sharp voice. "What number do you want?" Mary Louise hesitated. Then she hung up the receiver without reply. It occurred to her that the hotel office was a public place, and that the telephone girl would be likely to yell out the number for all to overhear. To satisfy herself on this point, she went downstairs in the elevator and purchased a magazine at the newsstand. The telephone desk was nearby, and Mary Louise could hear the girl calling the numbers and responding to calls, while not 6 feet from her desk sat a man whose person was nearly covered by a spread newspaper which he appeared to be reading. But Mary Louise knew him by his striped trousers, and straightway congratulated herself on her caution. Undoubtedly the detective had figured on her telephoning, and she had nearly fallen into the trap. Back to her room she went, resolved to make no further move till morning. The day had been a hard one for the girl, mentally and physically, and at this moment she felt herself hopelessly involved in a snare from which she could see no means of escape. She read a little in her magazine to quiet her nerves, and then went to bed and fell asleep. At daybreak, Mary Louise wakened to wonder if she had done right in running away from Miss Stern's school. Grandpa Jim had placed her there because he did not wish to take her with him when he left Beverly. And now she had come to him without his consent, and in doing so had perhaps delivered him into the hands of his enemies. Poor Grandpa Jim. She would never cease to reproach herself if she became responsible for his ruin. As she lay in bed, thinking in this vein, she allowed herself to wonder for the first time why her dear grandfather was being persecuted by the officers of the law, by the government of the United States, indeed, which should be just and merciful to all its people. Of course he was innocent of any wrongdoing. Grandpa Jim would never do anything to injure a human being, for he was goodness itself, and had taught her to honor truth and righteousness ever since she could remember. Never for a moment would she doubt him. But it was curious, when she came to reflect upon it, that he would run away from his enemies instead of facing them bravely. For many years he had hidden himself, first in one place and then in another. And now, at the first warning of discovery or pursuit, would disappear and seek a new hiding place. For she now realized